The Syntax of Things by Arisha. Chapter 34. To be a fool. Vigilance. I need a break. You begged for this, changing your mind already. Potter nodded impatiently, still on his knees. A drop of sweat fell from his upper lip, and he slowly stood, his knees trembling, as he let himself collapse on the sofa. I did better. I did, didn't I? Did better by shielding his mind for 5 seconds. The improvement was too fascinating for Severus to bear. Picking the lessons up again was supposed to alert Potter's consciousness and prepare him for unpredictable attacks and possible impetuous outbursts. There was no denying, however, that he was becoming weaker and weaker every time he found himself ridiculously splayed on the floor like a dying acromantula. It's not enough. Potter mumbled something under his breath that Severus didn't catch. Well, it couldn't have been anything better than fuck off. Anyway. Language. Fuck, cunt, shit. You're being childish. Then let me be. What the hell he had agreed to teach Potter, he didn't know. It was bad enough that Dumbledore had forced him to do it once. Continuing by free will and behind Dumbledore's back nonetheless was not only reckless, but scandalous. They would get caught sooner or later, for there was no way around it. Potter's excuse would be the spontaneous spirit of his adolescent soul and his infamous nonchalance regarding rules. As for Severus, there would be no such excuse for that matter, and his assistance would be seen as recruiting the boy into the dark arts. Or breaking his mind. Or fucking with it, which in all honesty was all that was happening. 5 minutes, Potter. I need at least 10. Shush, I'm focusing. Why, Potter? Do you wish me out of my chambers as well? Perhaps I should ask for permission the next time I desire to be in my sitting room. However displeasing it was, Potter was spending half the night here anyway. Severus should demand rent, or at least obedient servitude for a year, if Potter lived to see the end of the year, of course. The positive end of this swaying thread was that at least he was exhausting Potter so mercilessly that the boy had no other option but to drop dead asleep right after. Shh! Potter repeated, closing his eyes. His shirt was damp, stuck on his chest and armpits. How could such a skinny kid sweat like a whale was beyond Severus's understanding. The boy had no fat to burn. He was most likely wasting his muscles away. Tired as he was, Potter huffed and grabbed his head in his hands, squeezing. Headaches were a common side effect of legilimency. Confusion was another, as well as dizziness and nonsensical verbalism. That last deficiency had accompanied Potterson's birth, however, so Severus could hardly blame himself for it. I'm ready. I'm not. Digging into that abused mind again? What for? He mentally went through the list of horrors he was about to see and shivered in terror. Raise his wand to watch the deaths of innocents, to watch the despair of the night and the pretense of the day, the disapproval and the praise in the eyes of people he did not care about, tensing further at the reminder that Potter did. To see himself through Potter's eyes and drew back frightened to death, or, as Potter would finally put it, scared shitless. Because he didn't want to know. He didn't. And Potter's manipulated psyche had ceased to amuse him centuries ago. Legilimens. Potter did resist. The struggle was there, vivid and brushing against his magic as Severus pushed ever so lightly and then viciously into Potter's scrambled blend of a brain. There were images he could not quite make sense of, rooms and trees and mouths talking, laughing, chewing. Severus was in there too, but he found that he didn't care, for it didn't matter, and Potter was falling on his knees again, holding his stomach as though it would drop on the floor if he just let it go. That will be all for tonight. Get up. A gurgling sound escaped Potter's throat, and he brought his hand up to his mouth just in time for the unexpected stream of blood that gushed from his lips. Looking at his own blood, wide-eyed, Potter tilted his head back and looked up for help. As for Severus, all he could do was uselessly look back down in dread, and let the chilling terror that attacked him crush his lungs. He closed his mouth just as Potter opened his to let more blood out. Sir. Severus quickly kneeled down, not knowing what to do. What had happened? Poppy, not Poppy, Dumbledore. Bugger, not Dumbledore. I'm dead, I'm sacked, I'm dead. Potter, talk! Get up! Potter got hold of his shoulder as he covered his mouth with the other hand. He coughed hard, more blood spilling out, and his forehead landed on Severus's chest. Potter! Fuck. Potter! Severus's vocabulary had been reduced to a point where he could not prove himself helpful, even if he wanted to. Desperately wanting to provide assistance didn't make any difference to his futilely kneeling there and watching Potter vomit blood. Can you talk? Potter, get on your feet! Choking to death, blacking out, dying. Fine. The hero was fine. Just a teeny tiny accident, nothing to worry about. An artery. Yes, split in two due to exhaustion while being taught illegal dark arts. Yes, Professor Snape was with me the whole time. He should begin composing his final apology. He suspected that oops would not pass as a satisfying response to mindlessly breaking down the wizarding world's last hope. Get up! Trying to calm his own rapidly beating heartbeat, Severus helped him to the couch and fetched a napkin. Potter accepted it and wiped his jaw.
I bit my tongue,
he said with a hesitant look of shame on his face. He'd bitten his tongue. Severus was quite amused with his luck. Under pressure, perhaps he'd admit that he was even engrossed in it. His sins still haunted him gracefully, however, and whenever deities were supervising his debts had to be pleased with his humility. Then again, he was most likely cursed. Were this a mystery he cared to solve, he was absolutely certain that he'd find at least one voodoo doll of himself nailed on a pentacle somewhere, with a Potter doll carefully pinned on him. It made sense.
This is getting dangerous for your health. You already... No. Should the headmaster... No, we're not quitting again. I want to do this. You understand that I am responsible for whatever happens to you here. Do you not?
Silence. Deep breathing. Another napkin. Potter hadn't seen his shirt yet, had he? It'd be a phenomenal plot twist to get caught walking like this back to Gryffindor Tower. A student exiting a fascist's chamber drenched in blood. This was getting better and better.
I know, I'm sorry, No, actually I'm not.
Potter took a deep breath.
You won't turn the tables, so you can make this be my fault. I asked you. You accepted this. And you accepted this, me, knowing how bad I'm at it. If you didn't want me here, I wouldn't be. You wouldn't have let me.
Several moments passed, which Potter interpreted as an agreement. The silence stretched, and then Potter tilted his head, looking at him curiously.
You want me here?
His lips were as red as they'd ever be, and reminded Severus of squashed cherries. The blood made them appear swollen. Moisture lightened the right corner.
Don't you?
And suddenly Severus needed to avoid the boy as one avoids long looks at the sun. Get your things and get out. Enough with that waste of time that you are. Your lesson is over. He strode to his bedroom and slammed the door close. Only when he heard the boy leaving, he let a long breath escape him.
I have an idea,
said Potter as he brushed past Severus and sat on the carpet before the hearth. Although I was under the impression that your mental ability to remember what you've been told hasn't fully wrecked yet, I was obviously wrong. Let me repeat this once more. The next time you will knock on my door uninvited, I will request your expulsion. Potter nodded absently and took out a notebook.
Yes, so I was thinking. Sir, sit down. I was thinking that I can't concentrate because all I think about when you cast on me is to concentrate, and then I think of all the things I must not think of, trying to remind myself to not think of them. Does that make sense? Sir, sit down.
Like the fool that Severus was, Severus kneeled on the carpet and looked at the notebook Potter was holding. He only managed a brief glance before Potter closed it.
So I realized that I must think of something instead of thinking of nothing. You tell me to focus and clear my mind, but I'm not Gandhi, and I can't think of nothing, so I must think of something. And even you, when you clear your mind, you actually think of what you want others to see that you're thinking. So you pretend to think of something, so you do think of something.
Severus was aware of nodding his head, mentally erasing half of Potter's sentences off the way to reach the point.
You must focus on something,
he said dumbly.
Yes. Potter grinned. This is it. It's Hermione's arithmetic, boring and full of numbers and stuff, so I've tried to memorize a page of random numbers, and I want to try and recall them in the right order while you cast legitimacy on me and see what happens.
He was torn between insisting on tossing Potter out and slapping himself for not having thought of this earlier. Severus didn't speak for a long time. The contemplative silence made Potter slightly tense, although his eyes kept looking up expectantly. Pretending not to notice the part of his consciousness screaming that this was all a mistake, Severus took out his wand and struggled up to his feet. Very well. The "I knew you'd agree" beam on Potter's face did not help Severus's esteem, but he packed the shame for his quickest surrender ever away and let Potter have it his way. Severus cast the spell. The more he thought about it, the more he failed to see why he was reluctant to try this. The little bugger's expression was beyond ridiculousness as he focused his eyes on the tip of Severus's wand and then screwed them shut as the penetration began. The invasion, rather. Severus found himself amused as he shrugged off the particular life-saving correction and concentrated on the task at hand. 3, 1, 4... It was working! It was working because it was a cheap cheat rooted in idiocy. Whose idiocy? He couldn't tell. 1, 5, 9. Potter's idiocy. He lowered his wand and the room around him reconstructed. You utterly uneducated, illiterate, ignorant boy. Random numbers! That's pi, the constant of Archimedes. He could just as well have told him that in Japanese because Potter bounced and grinned as he urged Severus to try again. Go on. Why did you stop? I did it. Admit I did it, right? I want to try again. They tried again. And it occurred to Severus that it was working better than his own delicate techniques, which he had tested at length for the best part of his adult life and had preferred to follow due to their consistent effectiveness. Potter was wrong about all of this. It would be suicidal to allow the Dark Lord to dig into his mind long enough to read an entire mathematical sequence. It was something Severus himself wouldn't risk. Something Potter was succeeding at. But weren't Potters always a step ahead? Only that Potter was now also 3 steps closer. Who's Archimedes? Hail the hero! The finest young women of England were eating their hearts out for the boy who lived, and Potter was standing just a breath away from a Death Eater, struggling to buy time with small talk. Severus glared in contempt and inwardly shuddered the disturbance away. Pretending that he hadn't noticed Potter's aspirations, he glared for another moment and then strode to his cabinet. A mathematician, care to toast? To my success? To your unconventional failure. You do find new ways to amuse me, after all. Although the old ones worked better. Damn! Potter took the glass from Severus's hand and sniffed at it before scrunching his face, fighting the sudden impulse to scoff at him that it was elf wine, not elf piss. Severus promised himself to irritate the boy later. They sat on the sofa, and Potter opened the notebook again, making a face when he found something. Oh, you're right. Of course he was. About what, though? So what does that number do? Many things, of which you are likely to appreciate none. Potter stuck his tongue out, and Severus was startled into laughter. Some of his wine splotched his thigh, and he tried not to think about the consequences of this new achievement that Potter had somehow mastered. What would the new excuse be for the boy to keep coming back now? Surely he'd think of something, and for the life of him, Severus couldn't make a sensible hypothesis of why he had allowed this to get this far anyway, especially since he'd known from the very beginning that it was all a facade. On the other hand, he hadn't done anything wrong. He had helped a student. As soon as he decided this, his mind trailed back to all the mean remarks he should throw at Potter to make up for this slip of character. Against his better judgment, he grunted for his frustration off and let the sound of the fireplace take hold of his reality. 1, 2. You don't even know this happens, do you? And even 3 seconds of imaginary loneliness. Why? What happens? There's this muscle on the side of your neck that keeps throbbing when you're tense. I think it's a knot or something. It doesn't look very normal. Severus stared. He never had anyone comment on his neck before. It's been there for years. I've learned to ignore it. Potter took another sip, seemingly getting used to the taste. What have I done? And the boy was suddenly hesitant, as though bracing himself for something. When he spoke, his voice was drenched in nervousness. I'm not sure, but if it's a knot of some kind that can be untied, you probably bend your head too much when you read. I tend to do it too. It occurred to him that the boy needed an immediate lesson in hiding his intentions. Was this how he intended to show up in the line of hoping to be Aurors outside the ministry, with all his sentiments clearly painted on his face? He'd barely survive a week on duty, and then he'd get himself killed by the first street junkie he'd interrogate. At this moment, Potter could just as well jump up and shout, You have a knot! I volunteer! What are you snorting at? Mind your business, Potter. Potter chewed on his lower lip for a brief moment. May I try something, sir? Here we go. No. It'll only take a moment. If you move from your seat, I swear I'll hex you. No, you won't. Smiling like the idiot he was, Potter shifted closer, and Severus found himself too startled to protest when two strong hands gripped his shoulders and turned him with his back on Potter. Shrugging off his terror, he attempted to stand when Potter repeated, "A moment," and Severus sighed in irritation and waited for the blasted moment to end. 100 points from Slytherin, 50 of them for being in an unsuitable situation with a student, another 50 for hissing.
I know, I found it.
Be quick. Potter's fingertips were warm and soothing as they moved in circular motions, and Severus couldn't remember having ever been granted the luxury of having someone do this to him. He was only vaguely aware of a confusing déjà vu as Potter continued, but he didn't pay any mind to it because the boy's palms dug into his shoulders and squeezed gently as the circulation returned to nerves that had been inactive for years. Bliss, thought Severus of adding to the mental list of the states Potter could put him in, and was immediately stunned by the simplicity with which his body reacted to the touch. Whatever discomfort he was expecting to experience under those hateful hands was immediately forgotten because the pressure was firm and disciplined, and Potter's digits dug from just upon his shoulder blades to the skin behind his ears and caused the lightest of shivers on his arms. He was aware of someone grunting, and he realized it was he himself who had produced the traitorous sound. Certainly Potter had found his calling. Two thumbs pressed on his nape again as Potter parted his hair for better access.
So what do you think?
Potter asked quietly, if not encouraged. His fingers brushed so softly against his skin that Severus had to suppress another humiliating shiver that had assuredly nothing to do with Potter himself. Because he despised Potter, gravely.
Think.
If Severus had to pick his weakest moment, he would definitely choose this one. The one in which his voice broke to a huff because the most disgusting fingers in the world that belonged to the most disgusting person in the world had driven him to a state of ecstasy. This was wrong. What am I doing?
Don't you think my attempts at seduction are becoming better and better?
Potter asked closer to him than Severus would have liked.
Hardly. You need work.
Potter responded with a chuckle, and, pretending that all of this was entirely normal, directed the conversation elsewhere.
Oh, I'm not just good at potions anymore. I'm actually the best in the slug club. Have you heard?
In between the largest disappointments of my life, yes, I've unfortunately heard that too. He bent his head forward to expose his nape better. This was so good. It just had to be a sin.
Are you jealous?
Afraid of moaning, he quickly forced his tongue into responding, only it came out as a murmur. Very. Do you want your points taken now or in class?
You must give me 1,000 points for this, judging by how you haven't killed me yet. I guess I might be quite good at it.
Yes, be amused, boy. You forget that you will be permanently forbidden from ever coming near me or my chambers again. Right after you finish. Unless you intend to do this again. He had certainly not just thought that. You'd wish, Potter. Are there even any points left in Gryffindor for me to take? I'm told Longbottom produced a miracle while casting a charm again.
Are you kidding me? We are 70 points ahead. We're going to win.
Potter pushed his thumbs downwards. Severus hummed in response.
No, we are. And second comes Ravenclaw. You're not below Hufflepuff, are you? You weren't yesterday. You are?
Severus's nostrils flared and he closed his eyes. I've no idea.
Well, if you are, I guess you deserve it. It's just so gross that you Slytherins are treated with sympathy simply because everyone is afraid to treat you properly. You hex a Slytherin, and you're in trouble. A Slytherin hexes you, and it was your fault for provoking them. Doesn't make sense. Or does it? You are a Slytherin after all, but you're not pureblood, so...
Do you ever shut up, Potter?
What? Oh.
As all his tension drifted away, he couldn't help but bite his tongue to keep his nonsense from reeling out. Most likely, I once watched your mother do this to your father and fantasized of skinning his neck and hanging him on a tree near the lake. Did not exactly feel like a fitting comment. If only Lily could see him now, he'd be damned for eternity for being so close to her pure and beloved son. He, a Death Eater, a criminal,
Did Potter even know that officially? Or had Dumbledore managed to hush it up to announce it at some other great and happy moment? Potter reminded him of Lily sometimes. His eyes, of course, but his exceedingly unique personality resembled her own as well, if slightly, when he was angry or feeling lost. Lily had a sharp tongue, too, as she had a passion for defending others. Then there was James. Like the arrogant bastard that he was, he had to overlap Lily's perfect genetics with his own filthy ones. And here Severus was, with the outcome of this tragedy rubbing a knot on his neck. It was a good thing that the boy reminded him of James, too. It made the illusions go away. It was safer this way. Potter wasn't Lily. No one was Lily. No one could ever take Lily's place. No one could ever remind him of her that much. But Lily would have never tried to keep him in her life like Harry Potter tried. That's enough. The motions slowed down slowly, softly, and then stopped.
Let me guess, you're going to say something rude and send me away now.
Yes, I was planning to. Thank you.
God damn it, he tried to remind himself that this was Harry Bloody Potter, the second generation of Karma's revenge against him for simply being. Somehow it didn't help, and he couldn't understand why he needed a reminder of that in the first place these days. Potter. The moment had suddenly become complicated. His breath escaped him harshly. I'm not interested, you foolish child, he thought. He had no reason to state the obvious, however, so he dropped it.
Professor?
Apparently, though, Potter hadn't. It's late. You should go.
Okay.
Neither of them got up. Potter's hands started moving again, and the touches were so light and subtle that Severus closed his eyes and instinctively pushed back. The fingers crept through his hair, and he thought of protesting as he tried to remember how many days ago he'd washed it, and whether it felt as greasy as it certainly looked. The fact that it was Potter who was caressing his hair needed another moment to kick in, and when it did, his mind screamed pathetically, "Bad idea! Told you so!" right in his ear. He made a mental note to agree with it in just a moment, and wondered if it was actually gay to let a teenage boy slide his fingers from the top to the ends of his hair. Well, it couldn't be gay if it was just a head massage. Severus choked on his own spit so hard that his lungs almost exploded.
Professor, are you alright?
Head massage, he tried to explain, but before he reached his tongue, he changed it to,
Yes, it's like get lost.